Welcome to the meeting, everyone. My name is Amrita Gill and I'm the clerk to the board. The first order of business is to elect a chair and vice chair for this municipal year. Do members agree to appoint Councillor Vaughan as chair and Councillor Kwan as vice chair?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, I'm now going to pass over to Councillor Vaughan.
Thank you, Amrita. So first of all, could I just remind participants of a few housekeeping points? Please keep your microphones muted unless you're speaking. Please wait until I call you before speaking, and can officers introduce themselves when they first address the committee? So item 2 is apologies for absence. Apologies have been received from Neil Newton. Are there any other apologies, Amrita?
I've not received any other apologies for absence.
Okay. I will now then do a roll call and declarations of interest to confirm the members in attendance. So when called on, please say present and note any declarations of interest. So Councillor Kwan.
Present.
Neil Newton has sent apologies. William O'Connell.
Present.
And Khadija Sekon. Okay, so we have enough for a quorum. So thank you for confirming that, and of course I'm Councillor Rory Vaughan also present. Item 4 is minutes of the previous meeting, and do members approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of November 2020?
Approved.
Yep. Approved.
Thank you. Now I think we move on to the draft minutes of the previous pension fund subcommittee. I don't know whether one of the officers just wants to say anything briefly about those, because obviously they're sent to us, I guess, largely for information. But I wonder if there's anything that, so is there anything that jumps out to people that they would want to discuss based on meetings of the pension fund subcommittee? I think the pension fund subcommittee discussed largely points that I think we might be coming on to ourselves later in the agenda. I think investment consultant review we're obviously talking about next. The quarterly update pack I think was similar to the one that probably we received at our previous meeting in November. Ground rent and affordable housing was obviously another issue that they discussed. But are there any questions that any members of the committee have got on the minutes of the pension fund subcommittee?
No questions from me, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, William. Yeah. So those are noted. And item 6 is the investment consultant review. Now, I do have down here of, can I ask Phil Triggs to introduce the item, but Matt Dawson looks as though he's ready to go on that. So Matt, can we hand over to you?
Thank you, Chair. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Matt Dawson. So I work for the Triborough, and part of my role is pension board and governance. So this is largely a good news story, very much under the committee's remit, but because it does brush up against governance, I did think it was important that the committee, the board rather, have sight of it. So this was something brought in 2019 by the Competition Markets Authority, and we actually welcomed it as fund officers. Open defined benefit schemes are all very unique and very different in where they're trying to get to and how they want to do it. And you can't be a consultant in 2021 and just be the old-fashioned buy list, sell list, and a bit of strategic reporting in the middle. You've really got to get underneath the funding strategy statement, the investment strategy statement, and be it's more like partnering. It's a very key relationship, and by creating this model, you can get an annual picture of how your consultant is performing against the subcommittee's aims. Now, it's largely a good news story. You're very well looked after by Deloitte, and the individual at Deloitte's Kevin Humperson. So he covers yourselves and Westminster. He's a very, very good consultant. He's been able to help steer the committee into asset classes that they wish to get exposure. There are a couple of very, very minor items. I mean, it would be we'd never score everybody perfect. There's something around reporting, and that's normal in every fund I've worked at. There's quite often reporting delays, and more often than not, there's an underlying fund manager that's got a different period end. So that, and then there was a slight issue around billing. But that's all about building relationships, really. And to be fair, you don't always know the cost of work in terms of hours before you undertake the work. So, yeah, largely a good news story. The board, the committee were very, very happy with the service that they are getting from Deloitte. The one thing I would say, and the one thing I did want to raise, is that we are actually tendering for this role going forward for the next, it'd be 3+2. So there's a full procurement exercise going on, not performance based. It might sound a bit strange after the positive review, but it's best practice. So it's ensuring that we get the absolute best consultant, and it's the usual qualitative, quantitative scoring. So that's being done through the LGPS framework, which is a great framework. I've used it a few times myself. To get onto that framework, you've got to seriously know the local government pension scheme. So it's the Deloitte, the Hymans Robertson, Aon Hewitt, and a smattering of others. So that's live, and by the time the next board meeting comes around, I'll update you with how that went.
Thank you very much, Matt. Do members of the committee have some questions on this item?
Not from me, Chair.
No, I noted those two that weren't perfect, and I thought it would be very churlish to raise those. It looks like a very good quality so far.
Yeah, I mean, Deloitte's they're not prominent in the space, but having worked at the Triborough for a couple of years now, I can actually see the advantages to that, in that you are very well looked after, and you don't get a house view from them. Kevin understands the funds very well indeed. So yeah, it's a good report.
Matt, I just had a couple of questions by way of clarification. It wasn't clear to me who had actually done this report. Was this the CMA themselves, or was this you as the people who use their services?
Yeah, it's officers. It's officers and ratification by the committee. The guidance itself, yes, was CMA. It's a requirement to do this, because there are instances of poor service and sort of misdirection, and of course there are situations, again, not here, and you don't really see it in this space, but there are investors in the institutional space where consultants do actually make their own products as well. So this was a great way of ironing out that conflict of interest. It's not really seen in the local government pension scheme, but yet there are institutions that they've got their own platform and they market their own products, and they're also advisors. So it was a great way of segmenting that.
Okay, so when you did the review against these, you found them, well, I mean, you've scored them obviously very highly, so that's good to see. And yes, similarly, there were just a couple of areas. Presumably, this was also reviewed by the pension fund subcommittee, because they will have
absolutely.
They looked at this at their last meeting.
Yeah, and that's the key. That is the key. So a great consultant is that they understand where the committee's trying to get to and how they want to get there.
And Matt, on your point about retendering this, presumably Deloitte are one of the people who decide they're able to put their name forward again to be the investment. This is sort of running them up against other competitors to ensure that we've got sort of value for money and the like.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, I mean, it's more the other Matt and Phil that will be doing the day-to-day work on this, but absolutely you can be very happy with a supplier, but you've got to be fair, and you've got to test the competition. And yeah, it's so they're sovereign contracts, so there will be 3 contracts, but it's being done as one exercise. So you'll still have, you've still got the your own contract and your own consultant.
Okay. Matt, thank you very much for that. I don't think there are any further questions. So I think we certainly note the report, and I'm glad to see that the provider, the investment consultant, has been of high quality through the last few years. So I think we can now move on to. So I think, sorry, first of all, do members agree recommendation to note the report?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, noted.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to item number 7, which is the Pensions Administration Service. Can I ask David Hughes to introduce this item?
Thank you, Chair. So, good evening to the board. So I'm David Hughes. I'm the Council's Director of Audit, Fraud, Risk and Insurance. And I also chair the Pensions Task Force, which was set up about 12 months ago by the Chief Executive in response to issues and concerns we had with the current provider, Surrey County Council, in respect to the Pensions Administration Service. So what we're doing this evening is bringing you up to date in terms of a report that went to Pension Fund Subcommittee last week, where it's pleasing to note that they approved the recommendation of the task force to appoint LPPA as the new pension administration provider for Hammersmith and Fulham Pension Fund from February 2022. And the report in front of you on the agenda, starting at page 22, sets out the matters in terms of why we were putting forward this recommendation. There's a project risks and project plan in section 6. And then moving on to look at the consideration we gave at the request of the Pension Fund Subcommittee for the various procurement options, which included particularly the 2 we focused down on, which were looking at private sector provision and the potential for public-public partnership, which we currently enjoy with Hampshire County Council for the finance, HR and payroll functions. Then moving on a bit further down the report, we're looking at why the public provider route was the preferred option and the risks and opportunities associated with both those routes, and then setting out for you the evaluation process which we undertook with the 3 public providers and the assessments which then led to the recommendation being made. Paragraph 32 summarises the assumptions as an evaluation panel we were making about the 3 public providers, who were all very strong and experienced public providers. And in section 34, we set out the rationale for identifying the preferred provider, LPPA, who have a very strong background in local government pension scheme, pensions administration, actually have a number of London boroughs as clients already, and we assessed their ability to provide an effective service to members of the fund and employers as being particularly strong, as well as their strong working relationship with their software provider and with their actuary, and also in terms of them overall demonstrating and aligning best the council's objective of being ruthlessly financially efficient in terms of the model they have, both in terms of the partnership approach and the cost sharing approach, but also the way in which they look to drive service improvements and to improve efficiency and maximise value for money through the partnership as well. So happy to stop there, Chair, and take any questions on the public report, and then happy to move into exempt session when members are happy to do so, so I can go through the details of the evaluation process.
Okay, thank you very much, David, for that introduction. So I'd like to invite the committee members to ask questions about this report and recommendations. Remembering, of course, that we're talking specifically about the public report at the moment. There is, as you know, a separate item on the exempt agenda to talk about some more details of this. So, William Bora, William, you look like you're about to speak.
Yeah, I'm just being cautious about which agenda I'm thinking about at the moment. But mostly my comments would relate more to the members' experience, to be honest, the process that comes later once you know, the work begins to move data across, and what engagement there'll be for members to assure themselves that, you know, everything's moved properly for them. So I don't have any particular comments. I've read the report. I'm happy with it.
I can reassure the board actually that that was one of the real strengths of the LPPA proposal and offer to us, both in terms of their current provision of the member portal and member helplines and so on, but also their plans for future development of that functionality to enable members not only to provide an update and change their own data, but to get sort of pensions calculations and so on online, to be able to self-serve and to get that information themselves, as well as actually having lots of really good sort of information that's being sent out to members on a regular basis to inform them about their position, about their pension position, but also about the changes in regulations and other things that would affect them in terms of their pension provision as well.
Yeah, I did look, and their website looks good, and I looked into who they were, and I think they've got all the things that we've got now and probably more to come.
Yeah, indeed.
So I felt quite comfortable, and that was reflected in the report as well. So
thank you, Mr. O'Connell. Thank you. Cheers.
Okay. Sure.
Laura, did you have any questions at this comments?
I was just interested, the other sort of clients, if you like, Surrey County Council, who would have had the same problems and issues that we have, has there been a review of sort of what their arrangements are, just so we can sort of compare, because I presume they would have had the same problems that we did, and it would just be interesting to note what the sort of fellow boroughs are doing with regards to new service providers.
Yeah, I'm happy to cover that in the exempt session if that's okay, Councillor Bora. That's something that we can give you an update on that. But yeah, indeed.
I mean, I think obviously we're happy to. Well, so I'd certainly be happy to see that there's the preferred provider has got a strength in LGPS in particular, because clearly that is important. And we'll talk in more detail about the evaluation. That's a few minutes later in the exempt session, given that obviously there are some commercial considerations there. I mean, in terms of I think this is a fair point, but a fair question to ask here. But just wondered if you could say anything about how you satisfied yourself that you can sort of transition in the next 12 months to the new provider.
Indeed. So one of the things we were very clear, Chair, was about what we would need to do for Hammersmith and Fulham to transition effectively with Surrey's support as the current provider, and also the plans that the potential providers would have it and put in place in terms of the milestones and the way in which they go about it. And that's again where we were more than satisfied that LPPA had a very robust approach to project management, to planning, to actually having experience of recent onboardings with a number of clients over the past few years. With authorities who had similar positions to our own in terms of data quality and other matters as well. So we were extremely satisfied that they had a very robust approach, and were actually appropriately resourcing it, which again is something else that was very important. That actually, from Hammersmith and Fulham point of view, we will need to put some resource of our own in, but actually the provider and their software supplier as well will be putting very good resource and very experienced resource in to help us make sure the implementation goes well, and a very clear plan which we are satisfied will help us to deliver that.
Thank you very much. There being, well, I'll allow William and Bora a couple of seconds to jump in if they need to, but just on this item, I think we've asked the question. So do we agree the recommendation to note this report?
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, so that is agreed. Now, let me just refresh my memory of what's next on the agenda. Yeah, so any other business is... Yeah, so any discussion on the contents of the exempt elements for item 7 will require the committee to pass the proposed resolution to exclude members of the public and press from the proceedings of this discussion. So do members agree the resolution to exclude members of the public and press?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed by me as well. So I think we're just going to pause if there are any observers, just to check whether there are any observers who